Good morning. Oh, thank you. So I asked to speak on the four principal commitment of His Holiness the Dalai Lama because of the larger audience, school students. Therefore, I will try my best to simplify the topic and make it more relatable to your day-to-day life. So the first thing that we interacted this morning was, I said good morning and you responded by saying good morning, right? Why don't we say bad morning? Bad morning, bad evening, bad afternoon. Why don't we say that? Because we all want to be good. You need to remember this when you say good morning. This is related to His Holiness's first commitment, developing fundamental good human values. Good morning. This is like a practice. Good morning. You should be good. I should be good. Good afternoon. Good evening. Good night. Yemudele, Sendele, Yemekuna, Deleki, Yizikama, Deleki, Kundosundi, Taki Shopas, Lavero. So this itself is a big teaching if you implement it, number one. Number two, think about your name. All of us have very good name. Maybe Tashi Digi, meaning one who is auspicious, full of happiness and peace. Similarly, Tintin Siring, the one who lives a long life and one who is upholder of the teaching. Then Tungadashi, one who is liked by everybody and always auspicious. Then Tashi Dile, Ishikando, Maha, whatever. There's so many names. And in the case of non-Tibetans, you may be Mary, Jesus, Ram Kumar, Prem Kumar. They all have good names. Nobody has a name called Devil. Dumdes, the meaning of Dumdes is in the Dua. So this also is a good reminder. In the Buddhist system of practice, for example, in Kalachakra Tantric practice, there is an occasion during the teaching where the Lama gives you a name, and then the Lama says, as and when I recount your name, imagine that you are filled with peace, happiness and bliss. So therefore, I want you all to remember these two things, good morning, good afternoon, and your own name. It's very important that you got a very good name. And what is important is now you need to live a life which is matching your name. For example, if you have a name Kashi Kundu, one who is auspicious and fulfilling, but the work you do, the way you live is inauspicious and not fulfilling, then the name doesn't do anything good. So in a way, spiritual practice is quite difficult. In a way, spiritual practice is quite easy. The only thing is we need to implement it. So this is related to His Holiness's first commitment. His Holiness's first commitment is promoting human values. What are human values? His Holiness has to say that it is important to promote human values because unfortunately today, everything has a value. Your mobile phone has a lot of value. Your car has a lot of value. Your house has a lot of value. Your money has a lot of value. Everything has so much value, but the human being himself or herself, we don't pay much attention and don't value our life, and especially we don't value the inner resources, the importance of love. Not many people value love, not many people value compassion, not many people value wisdom. That's the problem. That's why His Holiness had to say that the first commitment is promotion of human values. Now, in order to promote human values, you need to know that you have today obtained this very precious human life. Mili Rinpoche, you get now Mili Rinpoche Lagava. Mili Rinpoche Lagava. Mili Rinpoche Ina Ridate. If it's really precious human life, you must value it. And why your life is precious? Your life is not precious because you are physically very strong. There are many animals whose physical strength are much more than you. The elephant, the tiger, the lion, and so on and so forth. They are very physically very strong, very agile, right? And in terms of dexterity, agility, look at the birds. They can easily fly from one continent to another continent, and they don't need to get a visa. They can just fly straight and swoop down on a beautiful palace like the White House in America. Maybe do the drawings there also, but nobody will say anything. So in those things, the birds and the other animals are much, much more advanced than us. We are really, in one sense, we are really nothing. And in addition to these restricted physical abilities, we misuse our brain, misuse our intelligence. And because of this misuse of intelligence and brain, we come up with many things which are primarily for short-term solution, not long-term solution. And because of this intelligence, human beings' need is endless. I want this, I want a car, I want building, I want this, that, and invented so much. It's unbelievable. Human beings use eyeglasses like the one I'm wearing. Have you seen birds wearing eyeglasses? Elephants using mobile phone. they don't need anything. They live very simple life. And they die also very naturally. They don't need any complicated philosophy, complicated rituals. They just pass away. They are born in the nature, die in the nature. Now human beings, because of this human intelligence, we try to go against the nature. That's the problem. We try to go against nature and we attempt to exploit the natural resources to our advantage without thinking that the natural resources have limitation. This is very, very dangerous. Now look at big cities. Air is polluted, water is polluted. And still we say we are the intelligent human beings. The drainage is not working, the road is flooded. Intelligent human beings live there. So how about this intelligence? Where are you using this? That's my point. I'm not denigrating the intelligence itself, but I'm talking more about how much we are misusing this human intelligence, which is the only criteria by which human beings are treated as superhuman, as special. Otherwise, what is use of human life, which is so complex, so difficult to arrange, so many things are needed, whereas other animals and birds, they live very simple life, they don't need all these things. Now today, if you look at the extent of conflict that is happening in the world, pollution that is happening in the world, be it water pollution, be it air pollution, who created this? Tigers? Lions? Snakes? Did they pollute the water? Did they pollute the air? No. These are created by the so-called intelligent human beings. So His Holiness is very, very concerned about all these things. And His Holiness is basically saying, all the sufferings that you are encountering today are basically unnecessary suffering. Unnecessary suffering means if you change your attitude a little bit, think a little bit differently, you can be happier, you can be more peaceful, there can be less conflict. And he feels very sorry. And I remember very clearly, once I was attending His Holiness for a short interview with 2-3 people. Then His Holiness spoke about compassion. And he said, in order to promote compassion and loving kindness and so forth, you need wisdom. That means it is only by clearly understanding the reality, then you can develop compassion, then you can develop loving kindness. But we don't focus on the real problems of human beings. We focus on the external, glamorous expressions. That's the problem. Now, for example, I give you one example. For example, in Buddhism, we talk about suffering, we talk about impermanence, we talk about interdependent origination, we talk about emptiness. These are not invented by Buddha. These are the law of nature. And Buddha had to speak on this because it is by not understanding and living in accordance with the law of nature, we are suffering. So that is what His Holiness calls as unnecessary suffering. Because if you have understood that and lived in accordance with the law of nature, you will have much, much less suffering. That's 100% sure. So His Holiness gave an example, demonstration, when I was sitting with him for that short interview. His Holiness said, look, for example, on this table, if there are few ants searching for water, and on this table, let us say the water is here, few drops of water here, the ant is moving here, and it searches the water all around, going up and down, which you normally see what the ants do. And then sometimes comes very close to the water, then turns back and goes. Because it doesn't have that larger perspective. Whereas human beings, we can see, oh, it is here. We can easily know that. The ants don't know this, so they have problems. So similarly, in our case also, because of our ignorance, we don't know many things. And because of this lack of knowledge, we go in the wrong direction, creating unnecessary suffering. So let me give you a very, very convincing example. Let us say there are 3 criminals standing on the stage. 3 criminals. And they are to be executed and killed tonight at 10 p.m. Let us say. So they have only few hours. Another 11, 12 hours, right? So within this only given 11, 12 hours, how these 3 criminals should behave towards each other? Is it good for them to fight? They have only 10 hours to live, and is it good that they fight? Is it good they engage in corruption or bribery or exploitation? Is it good? They have only 10 hours to live. Is it good to do anything bad towards each other? Huh? Your voice is so small. Did you get your breakfast? Yes, then say loudly. No, right? No. So what they should be doing? They should be praying together. They should be consoling each other. They should be inspiring each other. Right? You understand this because they have only 10 hours left. But what about us? They have 10 hours left. How many years we have to live? You all look very good, so I'll give you some discount. So even after this discount, all of us here will not live more than 90 years. 100% sure. Right? Yes. So how should we live together during this rest 90 years of life? Being nice to each other, being good to each other, being helpful to each other, right? That's the point. Normally we don't understand this, therefore we mistreat each other. Keep this in your mind. Because when he always talks about the need to develop fundamental human values like love, compassion, and so forth, he's not saying this as a Buddhist practice alone. Something to do with Buddha, something to do with God. It's not just that. It is for your own well-being and happiness. Even if you have only 10 months to live, even if you have only 3 years to live, or even if you have only 1 day to live, just spend that life, that day, happily, peacefully, enjoy it, don't harm others, help others. Right? So therefore, morality, the first commitment, talk about human values. Human values means ethical values, moral values. So morality means 3 things. Number 1, not doing anything that is bad. Number 2, doing everything that is good. Number 3, helping others as much as possible. Very simple. Very simple. That is morality taught in Buddhism. So if you live that life, you are a good person, you are a good student. You are living in accordance with the teaching of His Holiness, Buddha, and so on and so forth. And it is from this perspective, His Holiness is on the one hand encouraging the Tibetans to understand the Dharma, the teaching of the Buddha. On the other hand, He is encouraging everyone to promote secular ethics. Because secular ethics or universal ethics has nothing to do with any particular religion. They are to do with our well-being, our goodness. Many of us are today facing a lot of physical and mental problems because we go after what looks attractive, what looks good, but not necessarily good for your mental happiness, physical happiness. For example, the amount of junk food that you eat. This is especially true to the students. Do you eat a lot of junk food? Yes, do it. What did you say, yes or no? What do you mean by junk food? Junk food means those foods which are packaged, which has a lot of sugar. Imagine most of the packaged food that is available are sugary. And then those that has a lot of salt and oil. So if you want to be good and happy and healthy, you need to reduce at least, if you can't stop, at least reduce eating those junk foods, like Coca-Cola and all those, drinks, where you have to spend a lot of money and then ruin your health. What is the use? So this is also because of stupidity, because of ignorance. You go after appearance. You don't know the reality. There is a big gap between appearance and reality. The way things appear are not necessarily like that. Stand up back and forget about others. Even in terms of marriage, you go after appearance, how handsome the boy is, how beautiful the girl is, which means the facial outlook. And then without checking, you marry. Then after a few months you get problem, then you say divorce or fighting all the time. This is what we see all the time. This is because you don't take time to judge and see things, whether it is good for you, others or not. So take time. You need to be very careful, very alert, especially in today's world. If you enter into a mall, big mall, the things that is displayed there are very, very attractive. The fruit juices and so forth are packaged nicely, and in addition to that, they will say buy one free, or 2 free. Then you end up buying everything, losing your money, losing your health, and so forth. So you have to be very, very careful. I don't have much time to explain this in detail. Otherwise, I will explain this in great detail to convince you to change your way of life. That's possible. So anyway, so the point that I'm making is His Holiness's first commitment is to nurture the fundamental human values. So touching the you should understand your identity. You should pay respect to yourself. You should love yourself. If you want to love others, first you love yourself. If you want to help others, first help yourself. Helping yourself is helping others. Helping others is helping yourself. And why should you love yourself? Why should you take care of yourself? Because you are the only true original copy in this whole world. In this whole world, you are the only copy. You are not duplicate. You are the only true original copy. Which means you have your special talent, special capacity. So you need to let these special capacities come out. Don't just lead the life of imitating others all the time. There is no need for all of us to become Michael Jackson. There is no need for all of us to become Bill Gates and things like that. We have the problem with modern world is we only copy others. More in a negative sense, not in a positive sense. The positive things we don't copy, the negative things, or not so very helpful things we copy. That's the problem. And you actually lead a life which others want you to lead like this. People have a lot of expectations from you. You should do this. Your teachers will tell you, do this, don't do this. Your parents will tell you, don't do this, don't do this. And the society will tell you what to do, what not to do. So you live a life in accordance with others say, you never give a damn thing about yourself, how you should live. That's the problem. So only few copies, few people, brilliant people come out from their action and make a stand and realize their own potential and use it, just like the Buddha. So find your identity and have confidence in yourself. Everybody has different talent, different capacity. That doesn't mean you don't have capacity. You have your talent, you have your capacity. Appreciate that. So that's what he's talking about. First commitment. Second commitment is on religious harmony. We have many different religious traditions in today's world. All these different religious traditions are supposed to promote human values, supposed to reduce suffering. But unfortunately, many a times, as history has very correctly demonstrated, that many a times religions themselves become a dividing force, not a uniting force. Many so-called religious wars have been fought in the history. And today also, there's a lot of unfortunate things happening in the name of religion. Because majority of the people, again, the problem is majority of the people, they don't know the messages that is taught in their different religious traditions. They only go after the rituals. They only go after what somebody says. And imagine that somebody, the leader of that particular religious tradition, is a naughty person, a political person. He will take all of you in the wrong direction, and you will be dying in the name of their religion. So you have to be very, very careful, very, very careful. Those people who divide and let people fight in the name of religion, they themselves are not there in the battleground fighting. They themselves are hiding somewhere in the bunker or sitting comfortably in an air-conditioned room and let the stupid people fight on the street. This is what we see all the time. So therefore, you should understand your own religion. What is the main message? It's very, very important. Blind faith is very, very dangerous. For example, I give you an example. In the name of the God, people are ready to kill each other. If somebody says something against God, people are ready to kill that person. But that person who is ready to kill others has no clue, no idea what is God, where is God. And most of us have no clue what is the meaning of God, where is God. We simply repeat and say, God created everything, they are watching. And we do all the nasty things, still saying God is there watching us. We lead a very, very funny life. So therefore, the important thing is always use your common sense, your reasoning capacity. I mean, it's ridiculous to say that in the name of that invisible God, about which you have no idea, you are ready to kill this person sitting in front of you. This person sitting in front of you, living and breathing. You have no concern, no care, no love, no compassion for this person sitting in front of you, and then you pretend you have this love and respect to the so-called God about which you have no idea. All these problems happening because of lack of knowledge, lack of understanding. So therefore, His Holiness, in His second commitment, says, religions are for solving the problems of the people, giving inspiration for people. So therefore, the different religious traditions must work together. And His Holiness really had made a tremendous contribution towards that. And before I forget, I want to tell you one thing. With His Holiness' first commitment, if you want to know more, read his book called Beyond Religion. Beyond Religion. Read that book. So read that book, Beyond Religion. It is for the new millennium, and then the updated version is Beyond Religion. Then for his second commitment, Interreligious Harmony, read the book Kinship of Faiths. Both of these books are translated and published by the library also. You can read it in Tibetan also. They are, I think, available in Hindi also. So read that to know the details. So interreligious harmony. Now interreligious harmony, in terms of practice, it can be done by having all the important religious leaders speaking from the same platform. That itself gives a big message to the followers of different religions to come together. Second, the religious leaders should go together for pilgrimage to holy places. And I had the privilege of going with His Holiness the Dalai Lama in Jerusalem, where we visited the Rock of the Dome of the Rock, a very holy place for Islam. Visited the Wailing Wall, which is a very holy place for the Jews. And then all the holy places for Christianity. We visited all those places and did prayer and meditation together. Similarly, I had the privilege of sitting with His Holiness under Bodhi tree with our Christian brothers and sisters. And in Ladakh, as we have seen, His Holiness is in Ladakh. The first thing he did was meeting the Muslim brothers and sisters. So let people believe whatever they want to do, so long as they don't misuse the religion, so long as they don't harm other people. Respect. It's like you're wanting to eat rice, I wanting to eat chapati. You want rice? Okay. I want chapati? Okay. I cannot say because I like chapati, you must eat chapati. That is stupid. This is stupid. So therefore there should be religious pluralism. That means for you, one particular religion may be good. Like for me, Buddhism is best. But this does not mean to say Buddhism is best for everybody. For someone else, Christianity is best. For others, Islam is best. So let them respect. It's like your spiritual food. Just like for your physical food, different people prefer different delicacies. So similarly for your spiritual food also, you can choose different religious traditions, which is very good. So there may be philosophical differences in terms of different religions, but the message is same. Message is love. message is brotherhood, message is sisterhood. So with that understanding, respect all religious traditions, especially those who are sincere followers of their own religious tradition. So therefore, His Holiness, another suggestion for this interreligious dialogue is to meet the real practitioners. Unfortunately, in all religious traditions, the real practitioners are not that many, not that many, few. So if you really meet, His Holiness recount this very interesting meeting with a meditator, Christian meditator, and he did not speak much English. So His Holiness made it a point to see him, and they looked at each other and changed some few words of pleasantries. And His Holiness said that without the need to use many words, his love that he practiced very clear in his eye, the way he was looking. So that's the fruit of practice. Right? So therefore, different religious traditions are like different flowers in a garden. In a garden, if there are many different flowers, different colors, it's nice. If there's only one flower, not many people will go there. His third commitment is about Tibet. His Holiness' first commitment is about human values because he is a human being. So we also have that responsibility. Second commitment is religious understanding because he is a religious figure. His third commitment is about Tibet because he is a Tibetan. So those of you who are Indians, you have special responsibility to your country for preserving your culture, your language, your tradition. Similarly with the Tibetans, we have this special responsibility to preserve our environment, our culture, and so on and so forth, especially in the case of the Tibetans. And especially those of us, the Tibetans in exile, we have a very special responsibility to preserve our language and our culture and our environment. Just this morning news, I read that on the Brahmaputra, Yalung Tangbo, the Chinese Prime Minister inaugurated a big project of putting, I think, 4 or 5 hydroelectric projects and damming Brahmaputra, whose negative consequences will be there both in Sri Lanka and India. So because of this very difficult situation in Tibet, and Tibetan children are now not allowed much to learn Tibetan language. In 10-20 years, Tibetan children in Tibet may not be able to speak Tibetan. That is the situation. So therefore, those of us who are in exile, who have the freedom, we must work doubly and triply hard to speak perfect Tibetan, to be able to write perfect Tibetan. This is our responsibility. If you really care about your country, if you really care about your fellow Tibetans, this is the job we need to do. This is the most important thing. If you are able to preserve your language, then through language, through writing, you will be able to understand all the great teachings of the Buddha and so forth. Right? And then particularly understand what is the meaning of Tibetan culture, what is the value of Tibetan culture, what are the messages taught by Buddha and great Tibetan teachers. So all those big books, Kagyu, Tenkyu, they should be used as textbooks. They are not just for display there. And His Holiness said this very many times. So we should take the scriptures out and try to read. If you don't understand the meaning, ask the questions. Value it. Extremely important. This is our task. This is our responsibility. So while you get modern education, it is even more important to get the traditional education. Because modern education, unfortunately, is more related to material development, physical development. There is really not much for mental development. There is really not much. That's why His Holiness is talking about revival of ancient Indian tradition, which is his fourth commitment. Now today, we live in a world where we lead a very rushed life. And everybody says, I'm busy. Is it important to be busy? Huh? Is it important to be busy? It's not important to be busy. What is important is what are you busy about? There are areas in which you should be busy. There are areas you should not be busy. You should not go there at all. So today when we say I'm busy, primarily you are chasing things outside. You are busy, trying to take something outside to fulfill your sensual needs, to see something, to listen to something, to smell something, to touch something. This is how the big malls came out. If you go to the big malls, these big malls, those people who started these big malls, they are not stupid. They are very clever. They know your weakness. So they said, if I start this big mall and put all the things which their senses need, they'll all come with their money. The world is exploited by only a few so-called clever people. Number one, we have plastic card now today. Many people unfortunately don't have idea how much money is there in their plastic card. Then in addition, as if to add fuel to the fire, all these big malls are there. When you go to the big malls, what happens? As soon as you enter the big mall, you almost lose your consciousness. You enter into a state of coma. Then you just keep on going. And then suddenly you will find this basket. You just pick up one basket because somebody took a basket. You have no idea why you are doing this. You have no plan what to buy for many people. So take that basket and go. And then you see this display, buy one free. Okay, good, put one there. Because the external package is so nice, you get attracted. You have no idea how old those fruit juices are. They've been lying there in the shelf. They've been moving from one company to another company. Really. But they will not smell because they are conservatives. Chemicals are being put there. So you pay a lot of money for all these things, buy all those things. Then after you come out from the shop, go back to reach back to your home and unpack the things that you bought, you will be shocked to see, why the hell I bought all these things? It's already there in my home. Shopping, this is called shopping coma. This is not a new thing. It used to be in Tibet also. If you read some of the mind training texts, Lojung Debjinala, Tumsi Sigwa, Tumrun Rasi, Tumsi Sigwa, Tumsi. And no Jimate Senda Jodi in a shopping coma, Pinitaka. The point that I'm making is, you need to be, in today's world, in today's situation, you need to be extra alert. Where am I going? What am I doing? What am I buying? Is it really good for you? Is it really good for your culture? Is it really good for your language? Is it really good for the peace and happiness of everybody? You have to think very hard. Because that's why in Buddhism there's so much talk about the need to do meditation, mindfulness. Because meditation is involving your mental consciousness, which we hardly do. We are all using the sense consciousness. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, and then the physical touch, all those things. Where we have become slave to the dictates of the five sense consciousnesses and not giving any credit to the mental consciousness. So the important thing is, if you use your mind and think and reflect and especially do something positive, it will leave its imprint on that mental consciousness. And when you die, it is the mental consciousness, especially the subtle consciousness, which goes to the next world, not the sense consciousness. So all the practices that you do with involving your sense consciousness, seeing a temple, probably if it leaves an imprint on the mind, it may be good, but otherwise will have not much effect. So you need to involve your mind through meditation. Now meditation means not sitting in a corner closing your eye. Meditation means getting habituated. Getting habituated means, obviously, getting habituated with good ways of life, good ways of thinking. In bad things, like anger, you don't need meditation. You're already expert on meditation, on anger. You already know anger. You already know jealousy. So meditation means, the need to do meditation is, you are controlled by your mind. Is this true? You are controlled by your mind. You are not controlled by your body. You are primarily controlled by your mind. So your mind is your boss, not your teacher, not your husband, not your wife. Your mind. And that is not a big problem, that you are controlled by your mind. But the problem is, the mind which is controlling you is predominantly stupid one, negative one, short-sighted one, ignorant one. That's why we get a lot of problems. So therefore, the path to peace and happiness is transforming your mind. And that practice of transformation of mind is called chö. Chö is change, transform the negative mind to the positive mind. That is called chö. So meditation means getting your mind habituated with good ways of thinking, getting your mind habituated with love, with compassion, with resilience, with patience, with forgiveness and so on. That is called meditation. That was one. So, the third commitment is preserving this very precious, unique Tibetan culture, Tibetan language, and Tibetan environment, which we have not much control right now, but we should make it a point to make Tibet come of peace. Because all the important rivers in Asia come from Tibet. So it is not only the Tibetans who will suffer, but all the neighboring countries will suffer. And another important thing is, and His Holiness in his four commitments, he said, his third commitment to work for Tibet is the most difficult thing that he encountered. The other three commitments, he had made these commitments freely and voluntarily out of his own personal choice as an important mission. The commitment on Tibet is not out of his choice. As and when he was chosen as His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he had to take this responsibility. Right? So therefore, Tibet is right now passing through a very critical, difficult period. The very identity of Tibetan culture and Tibetan people is facing total threat of extinction. Because one, in Tibet, where we have now nearly 8 million human population, normally we say 6, but according to one well-researched data, they say around 8 million human population. They have no choice, no freedom in Tibet. And those of us who are in Israel, we are also scattered now to different countries. So unless we make extra, special effort, it may be an uphill task for us to preserve it. Right now things are relatively going well because His Holiness is still present among us. His inspiration is among us. But how long we can just rely on Him? So the best way of relying on Him is follow His teachings for many lives to come. And make sure all the Tibetans remain united. Because unless we become strong, unless we become educated, unless we are able to use the world platform, China is not going to show any compassion and love for us. They don't care about us at all. All they care about is Tibet. They want the land of Tibet. They want the mineral resources of Tibet. They don't want Tibetans. They call Tibetans barbarians. That's why any Tibetan who is really signing up, they will silence him and whisk him far away. That is what has been happening for the last so many years. So you should be cognizant about what is happening in Tibet with our brothers and sisters. And each and every day you should make a commitment, do something to preserve our language, our culture, and more importantly, unity of the Tibetans. Many times, unfortunately, human beings like anywhere are same because of short-sightedness. You know, when you are able to go to a place where you are able to find a nice room to stay, a little bit of money to spend around, then you think you've gained the whole world. And then you turn to your own people instead of turning to the enemy, which is very, very unfortunate. Because even the Chinese government, when they expelled the Tibetans, they did not discriminate, saying that I will expel out only the Usams or only the Ambos, only the Khambas. They did not say. They thrown all of us out. Even the enemies are treating us as same. They are not discriminating. Now after coming into exile, look at the intermarriage. Usam, Amdo, Khamba, among them intermarriage. Now there are some stupid people talking about just Khamba, just Usam, just Amdo. Are you going to destroy all these marriages? Are you going to do the work which is not finished by the Chinese government? But I'm not trying to give you a bleak picture. We have great hope. Because the hope is His Holiness during the past so many years made us strong by establishing all these schools, all these settlements. And during the past so many years, now we have many relatively good educated Tibetans. Not only in the traditional sets of learning, but also in the modern sets of learning. Very capable. If you have just witnessed a little bit about the recent celebration in Dharamsala, you can see how united and how efficient they are. Like Dharamsala was completely flooded with Tibetans. I was amazed from where the hell all these Tibetans came from. They all put together to see His Holiness, to be together. That is our strength. That gives a big signal to the enemy. Yes, Tibetans are not there. They are going to do something. So therefore I need to honestly go for the dialogue. If you are not strong, you just talk about negotiating dialogue. China does not give a damn. They are only waiting that His Holiness goes away, then all the problems will solved. So it is our responsibility to continue the legacy of His Holiness by, number one, being together. Number two, preserving all the good Tibetan values and traditions. So that is His Holiness' third commitment, to speak bravely. And his fourth commitment is, sometimes we use the word revival of Indian Indian tradition, but this days we prefer using preservation and promotion of Indian traditions. Preservation, promotion, and appreciation of the great Indian value systems. I quite recently bought a book of science in the Indian philosophical tradition. Very rich even in the field of science and in the field of philosophy, of course. Very rich, very deep. So therefore, like the monks in all these monasteries, they spent almost 20 years, day and night, studying the meaning of these profound philosophical teachings that came from India. The concept of interdependent origination, the concept of non-violence, the concept of compassion, the concept of harmony. These are all something that we study every day. And when you study such a thing, then you are able to clearly understand, non-violence is not just absence of violence. Non-violence is a dynamic force, active practice of compassion. You will understand this. And you will also understand, even if you look at your physical structure, you are more non-violent than violent. For example, you don't have teeth like tigers. We eat meat. But if we are to kill the animals that we want to eat, instead of being able to kill the animals, all our teeth will fall out. We don't have those kind of teeth. Then look at our nails. It's only good for scratching, not for preying other animals like the hawks and the eagles and things like that. Right? And then His Holiness once demonstrated this by saying that if you look at the arms, long arms, it is good for hugging, not for hitting. Then also these nice fingers for shaking hands, not for hitting. And I cannot forget this one. Once His Holiness was, giving this kind of teaching in the Brahma Kumari in Varanasi. So I was sitting on this right side, supposed to be the translator. So His Holiness said, "This is not for hitting." And His Holiness hit me hard and nearly fell from the chair. So I remember this very, very well. So therefore, now the problem is, physically we are more non-violent. And then why so much violence today? Because we misused our human intelligence. Only few people use it in the right way, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Mother Teresa, Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, many great teachers are there. And because they use this human intelligence the right way, even one person brought so much peace and happiness in the world. Now we don't see so many people like that today. Very few people, because I had this great privilege of meeting Nelson Mandela, having a cup of tea with him, and also Vaclav Havel in Czech Republic. And when I personally met them, it's always down to earth, ordinary human beings. No pretension, no haughtiness, no arrogance. Right? So only few people like that. Unfortunately, today I don't know how many people are there. So as somebody said, if you don't find any good people around today, you yourself be one. You yourself should become one good person. And we all have this capacity to do something good. Right? So revival of ancient Indian tradition or preservation of Indian tradition primarily means the art of logic, using reason. Whenever you have some problem, don't jump to conclusion, think, use your reason, use your brain. Second, you should know the art of controlling your emotions. How to control anger, how to reduce attachment, how to reduce jealousy, how to reduce negative conduct. This beautiful thing is luckily all that is written text, we can read all this very, very easily. Right? So we must impart this quality. Now for example, anger, we should think a little bit. The destructiveness of the anger, you will be able to develop that condition. Yes, anger is very bad. So write all the negativeness about anger. For example, anger makes you ugly. So the question is, you want to become ugly? Nobody wants to become ugly. That's why you put some cosmetics on your face, you comb your hair, wear nice clothes, and after all this ornamentation and adorning, if you get angry like this, you look ugly. And when you get angry, you lose your blood pressure increases. And when you get angry, your sense of discrimination, what is right, what is wrong, doesn't stay. You become a mad person. And not only that, I have a book published in America, which says that American loses billions of dollars because of anger. Not just a religious practice. In terms of, even if you think in terms of your economical benefit, you lose so much because of your negative emotions. There are people who work like a donkey but always shortage of money because they don't live a healthy life. Right? Right? So therefore you need to think in all these different perspectives why these inner values are important. If you are somebody who has developed all these inner values, like His Holiness Dalai Lama, he has faced so much problem. Lose his country, given the job to look after the country when he was just 16 years old. But he always carries a smile on his face and encourages other people. Right? So therefore, practices like samatha and vipassana, these are the practices that we must draw from the Indian tradition, which means the Nalanda tradition, and practice it. All right, so maybe I'm taking too long time. Position.
1 hour.
So 16 minutes. Oh, time flies. So I better shut up. Oh, दूसरे ना चलो सतना ये ना so those of you who are interested, you can ask questions. Now it is your time to attack me.